This is Shrinker's Workshop, the game I made for the 2024 GMTK Game Jam, an annual game development challenge in which you have 48 hours to create a game. Only this time, that was doubled to 96 hours. This year's theme was built to scale, so the game is all about using your shrink ray to scale down and get inside of broken items that customers bring to you. Once you're inside, you repair, replace and add new parts to fix the item. Despite some flaws with the game, I think it's one of the best I've made in a jam. Perhaps it's because we had double the time this year, or because I'm feeling more confident using Godot. Either way, I'm really happy with the way it turned out, and this is how it was made. I started the jam as soon as the theme was announced. As usual, I brainstormed as many ideas around the theme as I could. I tried to incorporate a scaling mechanic and possibly a building mechanic as well. This was hard because a lot of the ideas I came up with didn't need the scaling mechanic. For example, creating a model train track and scaling down to control it. That would be almost indistinguishable from controlling a regular train. The idea that I was drawn to the most was a machine that could change the size of objects, but how would I make that into a game? I decided to take inspiration from Overcooked, a game I recently played at a friend's house. In Overcooked, you work in a restaurant completing food orders. You do this by taking raw ingredients, preparing them, and then cooking them. So what if I had something like that, but instead of cooking items, you repair items by changing their size? With this idea in mind, I began by creating a concept in pixel art. This is quite unusual for me because I often like to get gameplay done first, but I wanted to take advantage of the extra time the jam had this year. I designed a workshop with tables, storage crates and a mini shrink ray to help resize items. I also created a repairman, a customer and some small items to fix. I was really happy with the art, I mean just look at it, but it highlighted the flaws in the idea, or should I say the lack of an idea. Staring at this workshop, I just didn't know how the game would work. Would these items need to grow and shrink? How would you interact with them when they do? And how is that fun? There were so many questions I had, but unfortunately I'd ran out of time, so I finished the day with that on my mind. Overnight I had a flash of inspiration, because I woke up and knew exactly how to make the game work. Instead of growing and shrinking items, you'll shrink down and go inside the item to fix them. To get an idea of this, I created a new pixel art concept. This was to show what it might look like inside a toy robot. The key parts to this design were broken and fixed versions of different parts, such as these light bulbs, these gears, and these wires. I also made some changes to the original pixel art. I made this small toy robot and increased the size of the shrink ray to fit the player character. I also added some things you might find in the workshop, such as this workbench and this bin. With the new idea and pixel art, I was feeling significantly confident about the game, yet I still hadn't coded anything. So I sat down and created a list of crucial mechanics that I needed to make. I began with player movement. The player moves around the level with arrow keys, and like last year, I used a tile map to mark which areas they can go. After that, I created items. Items are objects that can be carried by the player. They come from item sources such as storage crates that infinitely spawn them. Tables can also spawn items, but they only hold one. I also created a bin to destroy excessive and broken items, and a workbench to repair items. Next, the shrink ray and going inside the item. Shrinking the player and moving them to a new scene was relatively easy, but getting the camera to scale with them proved trickier than I had anticipated. This was because the camera zoom needs to increase, whilst the player scale needs to decrease. Luckily, this was fairly simple maths, but it was funny seeing all the ways it could go wrong. The last crucial mechanic the game needed was a customer. They carry an item into the store, wait for it to be repaired and pay you. The amount is based on the percentage of problems you fixed with it. Once they leave, a new customer and item will spawn. With these mechanics in place, I felt that the idea was taking shape, but at the end of the day, I can help but feel it wasn't a game yet. The third day was all about trying to make it feel like a game. For example, there was no animations or sound. So I created a walk cycle for the characters and the shooting effect for the shrink ray. These were great fun to make, and I think they turned out really well, especially since I haven't animated the character for a long time. I also used opengameart.org to find all the sound effects for the game mechanics and background music which has been playing throughout this video. This all came together to make the game feel great to play, although its main problem was that it had no variation, and if you play it for a while, it gets very repetitive. To fix this, I introduced a 5-minute timer, so you need to rush to fix as much as you can. I think this made the game fit the jam format better, as it gave players a goal to work towards and a score at the end. I also introduced the second level, a dollhouse, with a TV for the player to repair, as well as chairs and cupboards for the player to replace. Whilst I would have loved to have made some more levels and add some procedural generation to them, that was enough for the jam. To finish the day, I created the itch page, uploaded the first build of the game, and made sure it was submitted to the jam. I struggled to get started on the last day because I felt that I had the whole game already, so I did some playtesting to see what I could improve. The first thing I noticed was that the game threw into it without any explanation. This led me to adding a tutorial to help introduce the player to the core mechanics. The tutorial is made up of hints that tell the player what to do and a basic level for the player to fix. Once you finish the tutorial, all the hints disappear, the timer starts, and customers come in with real items. I also added mobile controls to the game, because they're easy to add and would increase the accessibility of the game. Ever since I found out Godot browser builds work on mobile, I've added mobile-friendly controls to my games so I can easily hand them to people to play. The very last playtest I did for the game was with my girlfriend. She's not a gamer, so it was really valuable to see how she got on with it. This highlighted some major problems. That led me to tweaking the tutorial, level layout, and even some art, like this table. Finally, I built the game for the last time, uploaded it to itch, relaxed and waited for the jam to finish. It has been just over a week since the jam finished, and the ratings are in. I was expecting the game to have decent creativity and style points, but less enjoyment points. This was mostly since the comments that players left were about getting stuck with the tutorial and the controls. In the end, the game scored 3.7 and 3.5 for creativity and style respectively, but only 2.8 for enjoyment. This gave the game a total score of 3.3. This was roughly what I was expecting and about the same as I scored last year. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, I'm really happy with the way the game turned out. I felt way more confident using Godot this time. It was like I got to grips with the components and node system, and I've got ideas for features I can bring into my future games. For example, I'd love to expand the tutorial system so that all my future jam games have a solid introduction for the player. I think showing the player how to play is much better than just telling them in a static instruction screen. If you want to play the game, I'll put a link to it in the video description. I hope you've enjoyed watching this devlog for my GMTK game, Shrinker's Workshop. Subscribe for more great game development content like this devlog series for my museum management game. Thanks for watching, goodbye.